On this episode of Inside Great Minds, we get to interview Steve Kiles. Steve Kiles is a loan officer and market leader with Movement Mortgage. Part of what makes him an extraordinary person to interview is that he, while building and growing his mortgage practice and building the presence for Movement Mortgage in Houston, was also able to build his own podcast and his own following for Loan Officer Leadership Podcast. So this meant building a Facebook group. This meant hosting in-person meetings before the pandemic, and then interviewing guests on a podcast and growing his reputation, growing the impact for that group. So while doing that, he built a high production mortgage practice and recruited talent to Movement Mortgage. So in this episode, you're going to hear a little bit of Steve's energy that obviously is probably why he succeeds to some degree at what he puts his mind to. You're going to hear how he tells stories and some of his own compelling stories of how he got to where he is. So enjoy this podcast, enjoy this episode with the Steve Kiles.
So here we go. Adam, what's up, brother? Great to see you on the podcast, man. Killing it, doing great things.
Good to see you too.
Welcome to the Loan Officer Leadership Podcast.
Yeah, exactly. About a year ago, I was on your podcast, right?
Yep.
And how long have you been working on LOLP, Loan Officer Leadership?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. You know, here's the thing. There is a saying that I learned and really became even more profound last year. Whenever, you may or may not know, but my dad passed away in November. But even before that, on the podcast, we tend to end with something that says anything worth doing is worth doing badly. Just get started. And, you know, it was funny. I was with a friend of ours, Renee Rodriguez, and he does an event that helps you speak. It's called Amplify. It was great. Me and a couple of people went, and it was fantastic. And I'll never forget, Adam, I was in the middle of Amplify. Here I am. It's all about presentation. So it's just about how do you get clear in your message, clear in your voice, know how to be direct, deliver it well. And in the middle, dude, I just start bawling like a baby. And I'm like, Adam, there's, Dave Savage is sitting right here, all these execs and all these great people, Keeping Current Matters. You got David Childers right here, and you've got Alex Kutsichin with Sales Boomerang. And I mean, it's like all of these amazing people. And here I am, I'm 44 years old and I'm bawling. I'm like, I just realized all of that came from, I remember when I was 13 years old. Some kids with your dad took you fishing, your dad took you hunting, your dad took you to go watch NASCAR. My dad we were never poor. We just didn't have any money. And he came from a poor dairy farmer family. His dad was a violently abusive alcoholic. And so my dad made a commitment and made choices that we would not live in poverty. Even though we were poor, we qualified for food stamps, but we didn't know it at the time, man. It was more about family. But Adam, I remember at 13, my dad was always in the restaurant business. And for those of you who know the restaurant business, man, you had one GM, a manager, they opened the shop at 10 a.m., they close it at 10 p.m. It wasn't like management today. Like when I went to go work for a restaurant, when I got in the business, I needed 2 jobs bivocational, and they had like 6 managers. Like they had a front of the house, back of the house, kitchen chef, and I'm like, holy crap, I came from the old school. One manager did it all, and that was my dad. And so if I ever wanted to spend time with dad, I had to go to the restaurant, and I just did. I'd go help him wait tables, bus tables, clean dishes in the back, help cook and run prep. And I'll never forget as a kid, there are things that can be planted in your mind. I'll never forget it, hearing him say, son, if you're going to do it, you need to just do it right. Adam, great soundbite, terrible amount of pressure. Imagine that. Son, if you're going to do anything, you need to do it. And it was in the haste of a Friday night business rush. And you know what? From then on, you know what would happen is you'd go to take initiative, and your first thought is what's your first thought? Yeah. Am I doing it right? So a good comment, or a comment intended to be good, like, son, if you're going to do it right. And here's what's crazy, Adam. Up until my dad passed away less than a year ago, I found myself telling Ethan that. I said, son, if you're going to do it, Bubba, do it right. And then I went through Renee's event, Amplify, and I felt like God brought it to the forefront. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's where that came from. It came from my dad. And not that he was being mean. It was just a comment, a sound bite that just was burned in my head. And that's where we started saying, yeah, I didn't even realize why I would say anything worth doing is worth doing badly. Just get started. But I realized it was because we have to learn to overcome the fear of perfection. And that's a long way around. We've been consistently doing the podcast since I think July of 19. And we just decided to do it badly and just said, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm going to put out an episode every single week. And so now I think this week we cross 100 episodes, and man, we're nearly 120,000 downloads and really have just started catching steams now. So we're seeing a lot of downloads now, whereas in the beginning, you and I both know, you're starting a podcast, you celebrated 100 downloads, like 200, you're like 300. Whoa, we're getting it. And now we're talking tens of, 10 to 20,000 downloads. It's starting to really gain steam. And so I think it came out of, I'm going to make a commitment to do something. And even if it's bad, I'm not going to focus on perfection. I'm going to focus on moving it forward. And the commitment to something creates a grit and determination to not stop even when it's bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So,
interesting. I love a lot of the things that you just said. It kind of reminds me of a guy that I think you know as well, Taylor Wadehofer, who runs
yeah. I know Taylor.
Real Producers magazine. And the only reason I bring that up is because there's something I appreciate about him that's similar to what I appreciate about you, which is the idea that he is his mantra, hopefully he's okay with me saying this, is screwed up. Like he'll hire a team member and he'll be like, hey, I kind of expect you to mess this up. In fact, if you're not messing this up quickly, that means we're not moving fast enough. And it's been really beneficial for him growing his practice too. So great theme, right? Embrace failure and embrace screwing up, because that's how you got to start.
Hey, and I'll tell you what, even to add to what you're saying, there's a guy, Roush Engines, like in NASCAR, builds great engines and owns a bunch of the teams. And, there's a story about an interview, and somebody said, well, hey, how do you, and I'm just going to paraphrase it, but it's like, hey, how come you have one of the best engines in NASCAR? How come you're able to do what you do? And he said, because we're not scared to break the engine. And they said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, when other people are trying to ensure that the engine doesn't break, we put the car up on blocks and put a brick on the gas pedal. We go grab lunch. And when the engine blows, we take it apart and say, oh my God, look, it's a piston. We're going to make better pistons. Then he said, well, we don't stop there. We put it back together and we put the gas down on the floor until the engine breaks again. And we say, oh my gosh, it was this gasket or this head. We're going to make better gaskets and heads. And the key to it is, instead of being afraid to break, they're intentionally breaking the engine, knowing that that will cause you to get better if you can make better parts. So I think about, is it hiring the next team member? Is it a process that works okay, but it's like Jim Collins, good to great? Here's the problem with half our listeners is good enough. I think that's a disease. Here's what we should be saying is, Adam, not only, like I hear people say all the time, hey, Adam, could you do more? That puts a lot of guilt and shame. Like, what do you mean? What I did wasn't enough? But what if we phrased it like this, Adam, and said, hey, Adam, man, you're doing great things. Do you think you could do even more? Well, how powerful is just adding even more? Because now it's not a guilt of it's not enough, but it's a challenge to, what are you really capable of? See, part of the problem is, Adam, we stop because I look next to me and I say, well, hey, true story. I'm an identical twin brother. We're 4 minutes apart. Who's the oldest? Everybody asks you all your life. Who's the oldest? Who's the smartest? Who's the best looking? Who's the dumb one? Who's the fun one? Who's the serious one? Who got in the most trouble, right? Your whole life, you're looking side by side and you're comparing. And Adam, here's the challenge is we look at it and say, Adam, I'm doing better than most. You're not accountable for better than most. Adam's accountable for, did you run your race? When I get to heaven and God says, well done, good and faithful servant, he doesn't say, were you better than Jim, my twin brother? It doesn't matter. Was I my best? And what I love to challenge people with is not can you do more, but even more, which speaks to potential, not guilt.
Absolutely. But you are better than your twin brother for sure. Just to get this on record on the podcast. I'm kidding. That's a joke. Things. Yeah, just in case he hears this, right?
So sure. Hell yeah.
No.
Even more, man. Hey, isn't that a great way to phrase it though, man? Even more. Because it takes the guilt of, what do you mean that's not enough? Like we just had a record month for my team and market, like literally 20 years of doing this. We had the best month ever, best units ever, best market ever. And at the end of it, I'm like, dude, we're all celebrating. We're going to do great. But I challenge everybody with, what would it look, can we do even more? Not that it's not enough, but have we reached full potential? And I put a number on the board that I really believe is a part of our potential. And as a leader, God has placed us around the people we lead, not for comfort, but for clarity. Let me say that God's placed us around people, not to create comfort, but clarity around purpose. And I love whenever I used to work out, and I say used to, I am not even going there. But before, listen, I'm not even going there. But I was challenged whenever I was getting back in shape that I'm like, dude, I don't know if I can push anymore. And my friend said this, look, it is a proven fact that when you think you have reached physical exhaustion and you've got no more to give, that there is most times more than 30% left to give. Brother, that's like mind blowing. When you think I've given everything I can give, most people with your body, with you, what you currently have, can give more than 30% of what they think they can give. And so, are we placed in people's life for comfort or to lead them to their purpose? And purpose is not about looking sideways and saying, man, Jim, I beat you, or hey, I got more money than you, or hey, I've done more than you. Yeah, I was talking to my good friend Heath, Heath, yesterday. I swear, I was like, bro, tell me your numbers. And Heath is a great branch manager, great producing branch manager. And I said, bro, tell me your numbers, because at our level, I mean, who do you tell numbers? I mean, it's like, there's not many people to celebrate the victories where you're like, oh, you're just being arrogant. So I just said, tell me your numbers, man. Where are you at? Come on, bro. And he told me a number and I'm like, that's just stupid. That was amazing. But you know what happens is when I look at Heath and say, well, why didn't I do what Heath did? You lose joy, because comparison's the thief of joy. So we're called to run our race at our potential and with the people we're with, to ask even more, talking about purpose, not out of guilt and shame like it's not enough. And so, man, I'm just fired up. I think this year is a year of opportunity. I think 2021 is going to have challenges. Absolutely. But I'll tell you this, every year the market has moved down or there's been a compression or a shift, we've actually grown. And so it goes back into mindset, and it's saying, okay, how do I pivot quick? Because with the right people that we lead, I mean, here's what I'll tell you. I'll win a race all day long if I got the right people. It's just about moving people to the right spots. So, man, I'm excited. I think it's a great year.
Yeah, love it. And if for folks that are listening, this will allow us to kind of go back to Steve's background a little bit too. Just the storytelling and the way that you phrase things and ask questions point a little bit towards your background. What did you do before you were in the podcasting and in the mortgage space?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you well, let me just give a quick background. So, my dad was in the restaurant business. We traveled a lot. So we didn't really set down roots till our 12 years old. And that was in the mid-county Beaumont area of Texas. And then I just got involved in a church, man. I went on my first mission trip when I was 15. I learned how to play a guitar in Honduras. We spent 30 days. So I would work cement work to pay the first month. I would work the first month of the summer. It would pay for my trip. And then I'd take the second month, and I spent every summer in Honduras, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Mexico. I was in South America, man, just loving on people, making a difference. But I learned how to play music, and that became my refuge. I began to play professionally for a while. And then my twin brother and I, out of poverty, which again, looking back, I realized we didn't have anything. But back then, we didn't feel like we were poor. But Adam, I watched one of those get rich quick seminars, a Russ Dalby or somebody out of Florida, and they're like, "Hey, you can buy houses and flip houses with no money down." I'm like, "Well, this is brilliant. Let's do it." And so Jim and I found our first house at the age of 20 for $6,000. We bought a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, a single family. I mean, can you believe that? Adam, I didn't have any money. I had $1,000 credit card. Jim had $1,000 credit card, and we convinced a guy to pitch in 2,000. So we had $4,000. The dilemma is the house cost 6. So I convinced the seller to hold a note for the other 2, and we paid it off in 30 days. And I sold it for $10,000. So we made $4,000, and we only owned the house for less than 2 weeks. And I'm like, Adam, we just hit the lottery, bro. So that began a real estate journey and love and passion. And then we partnered with somebody in our early 20s, and we lost everything. So we had about $1.5 million in a couple of homes, 3 or 4 homes. All 4 homes went into foreclosure. We owed $250,000 in debt. We just lost everything. And I made a commitment to pay everybody back, and I did. We took the line of credit out on a handshake. And so over the next 10 years, we paid every person back. And then when all of that failed, I continued to play music. And then I was brought here to Houston. There's a large church here in Houston. So I just played music, man. I love worship. Played at a large church here in Houston. I was a part of the music ministry and young adults. And then in 2003, man, got into the mortgage business. And truthfully, I was walking across Greens Bayou, dead broke, making $250 a week on a salary, a musician's salary. Had $250,000 in debt, 4 houses in foreclosure. And I looked in my hand and said, this isn't enough. But I knew that God would be faithful. And I heard him tell me to get into the mortgage business. And I know that sounds crazy. I've heard 2 things. 1, get into mortgages. 2 was to marry my wife. And I'm like, dude, those were the 2 clearest days of my life. And I will tell you, since that moment, that was 19 years ago, I was 25 years old. And man, just love God, love people, continue to be a part of it. My brother's a church planner. We launched a church 8 years ago. He continues to be the senior pastor. I'm fully into the mortgage industry. I'm a producing branch manager, man, and just am continuing to love people through ministry, through the being a part of the marketplace. So
Yeah, I think that's an incredible story. The part that I always think of when I hear you talk is I'm like, it sounds like you number one, you've got the kind of confidence and comfort with stage time, right?
yeah,
Being a musician, and doing that, and being comfortable with that, right? Because not
yeah,
everybody is. And your ability to have good vocal variety and create pauses in your. I mean, speaking is part of what I do for a living. So like when you hear someone that's really gifted or good at it, you're like, where did they learn that? And I can't help but think that some of it was some exercising that muscle in church too, right?
man, I tell you. Hey, I'm laughing because I was just in Clearwater, Florida. We have a group. We had almost 300 loan originators flying to Clearwater, Florida, and so, man, I love that. I love being because it reminds me. Think about this. When my twin brother launched a church, there were 7 of us sitting in a living room. And so pre-COVID, like now we're still trying to figure out where everybody's at in the church and all that good stuff. But we'd grown it in 7 years to over 1,000 people. I mean, and there is when you start something with 7 and you say, we believe we can build, and here's what the culture is going to be, it's all of faith. Like it's easy to look back and say, wow, well, I mean, we just bought our first building. It's unbelievable to see what's happened, but you got to remember that thing started when there were 7. Like you're saying, please believe in the vision. I know where we can go. I know what we can do. I can build the structure. We know God's hands on this. And I tell you what, so much gifting comes from learning who you are. So Adam, what we have really focused on is this. When you uncover your identity, it unlocks your purpose. So each one of us have unique goals, not goals, but like giftings. What did God uniquely call you to do? How did he design you? Um, and I think that being a part of the church has really helped us because it's all volunteer, and your whole purpose is to connect people to God and help them uncover purpose. And when you're doing those two things, you just get more and more comfortable because you're constantly leading large groups of people. And what starts as 7 is 25 and 50. And heck, our dream team's almost 300 people on the dream team. We're still a remote church that sets up every single week at 5:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. And so, it's just been you start to hone in those skills of, all right, I better learn how to communicate, right? I better learn how to motivate and encourage people and help them uncover their purpose. So the church has definitely been a huge, it's an everyday iron sharpens iron type of deal.
I love it, man. And you've applied it, the principles and the purpose to what you do in mortgage and what you do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and they're so similar because here's the thing. Why should it be stopped at the walls? Like somebody who's uniquely gifted with details and loves paperwork, why can't we put a significant amount of purpose around that? Understanding that you're helping people purchase a home which is likely to change their lives, because a home creates safety, a home creates security, a home creates the comfort of a place. Like when my kids get home, here's our rule: our house is our safe place. Why? Because the world can be mean. And man, when you start to put into perspective that we're not just financing homes, but we're changing families' lives with one of the largest investments. And I'll tell you, it's interesting because most people, when done right, that when they get to the end of their prime, that home becomes one of their largest investments. So if we can help you set it up right on the front end, it literally can change a family's life.
I love that. So you're doing this mortgage piece. Um, why did you decide to do the podcast?
Yeah, great question. Um, because I wanted to make a difference. And it was something that and you know what's interesting? That's a great question. Why did I choose a podcast? You know what? There was a desire. Here's what I know is if I had known then what I know now, I could have shaved off 10 years. So let me give you an example. I got a couple new loan officers that have joined me in February, and the amount of loans we've done this month, it took me 2.5 years to do by myself when I learned. And what I realized was this: there was no one lifting up the hood and saying, not only is this what we're doing, but here's how I took my conversion from 60% to 94%. Here's how I stopped losing deals. Hey, here's how we overcome the rate objection. Hey, how do I effectively lead my team? The questions I was asking, I was looking for answers for. And you know what, Adam? They weren't out there. And what I found was, here's what's interesting. If you're asking questions and you find no solutions, I wonder, Adam, if you're not supposed to be the solution.
Sure, it's a great thing to gravitate towards. Yeah.
Well, and I kept looking for answers and they weren't there. It was a lot of pontification on like, hey, I was an originator 22 years ago. And I'm like, dude, that don't even make sense, bro, because that's not the battle I'm fighting. And so then I just said this: look, I don't care. I wasn't even tracking downloads till this year. Well, late last year, I started tracking them as we started seeing the numbers go up and up. I thought, man, we got to watch the growth and then see what helps us keep getting the word out. But I'll tell you, for me, I just was putting them out. I just said, look, good or bad, let's see. And then people started gravitating it to it, man. And then I started getting emails and texts. Like I probably get 5 texts a week that just say, hey man, thank you so much for what you're doing. It's changing my business. And so for me, I just wanted to be a contributor. I always love that phrase. We tell our dream teamers, and even my people here in my market, you can be a consumer or you can be a contributor. Which do you want to be? A consumer consumes, and that's all you're doing. You just take. And I wanted to be a contributor. And for me, I felt like I can articulate well, like my gift. Here's what is really, I would challenge people is this: what's your calling, what's your gifting, and what's your outlet? What's your calling, what's your gifting, and what's your outlet? And what I found out was this: I'm called to the mortgage business. Why mortgages? I don't know. I don't know, bro. I didn't even know you spelled mortgage with 2 G's. I'm like, mortgage. Okay, well, that's just dumb. Mortgage. I don't know. Mortgage. But literally, I knew I was called to the mortgage business. I didn't know how much money you could make. I didn't know the freedom you could have. I didn't know the lives you could touch. I just was praying, God, I need direction. I'm desperate for an answer. I mean, I'm in a spot where I trust you more than my next step, but I can't see my next step. And God spoke to my heart and said, mortgages, you're going to get in the mortgage business. So Adam, I went and looked at a guy. It was funny. It was my buddy over at a church here. His wife was the worship leader. And I said, hey, Marcus, will you train me? And he said, no. I said, what? I said, come on, man, I'm 25 years old. I'm hungry to get in the business. He says, nobody trains new people. I won't train you. And for 3 months, I pursued Marcus, and I just said, bro, I will do anything. He said, fine, show up at my office in Kingwood. It was an hour away from where I lived. I'm dead broke, $250 a week, $250,000 in debt, 4 houses in foreclosure. My wife, her coworkers think I'm a bum because I'm working out of my house trying to get started in the mortgage business, right? And I'm in an apartment complex, and our apartment was above the leasing office. So they're like, what does your husband do all day? So I know it's like awful. And it's so funny. But then I was just like, Marcus, if you will give me, we got to talk about this. I need to write that down. Job or an opportunity? That's a good conversation because we've been having it this week. But I said, Marcus, if you'll give me an opportunity. And he said, I'll give you an opportunity. And Adam, I went to his office. I drove an hour. I'd be there from 8 to noon every day. And then I'd go wait tables to pay bills at the night. And for 6 months until I could make enough doing what I was doing with him, because he didn't pay. It was 100% commission. And I literally was just faithful and faithful. Matter of fact, he didn't even have a desk. I sat on the floor until he was like, finally, you're not going away. We'll get you a desk. It's fine. But what I remember is, I've got a calling to the mortgage business. So what's your calling? My gifting is media. I'm good with my words. I'm good on camera. It's what I come alive with. Like I know how to communicate. And so what I began to realize is, okay, my calling's mortgage. So let me figure out how to be the best I can. Now, there's a lot of holes and a lot of challenges, but if my gifting is media, what can I do to help others with the gifting that I'm uniquely gifted at? Like, let me give you an example. I'm writing a letter of the heart right now. It's a tribute to my dad. And brother, I am not a writer. I'm a speaker. I am good at like talking things out by talking things out. So I literally called my mom today because I've been supposed to write this letter of the heart for 2 weeks about my dad. And I've got 2 pages and it's really good. But I just called mom and I said, Mom, listen, I said, Jolea used to do this for me. Jolea is now at the church full time, but I was like, I used to send half done work to Jolea. She'd finish it up and then send it out. And I said, I don't have anybody to do that. Would you finish this up for me? But what I realized is if you told me I have to go write articles all day long, brother, I can't do it. I don't know why it's a block for me, but if I start it, somebody polishes it. I'm happy to do the final draft, but it's always the in between that gets me. It just does. And so my gifting being media, I'm not going to go write. I'm not going to blog. I'm going to communicate, and the mic was the best way to do that. Hey, and look, so you're looking for your calling. What's your skill set? What am I uniquely called to do? My gifting, what makes me come alive on the inside? And then my outlet, which is ministry. And that's the contribution I make. So are you a consumer or are you a contributor? And so for me, that's the 3 things that I've just stayed in those lanes. And the more I can narrow those lanes, the faster my life runs. Hey, can I say one thing about job versus opportunity? Because this came up. And I know I don't mean, how much time we got? Like, dude.
4 hours.
4 hours. Okay. Well, I won't go that long. Hey, but listen, this came up too. And I love it because I was telling my market this week, I was with a good friend of mine. And the weight of an employer is when we give jobs. So here's the challenge, and it's the sound bites of the century, man. Hey, we're employers, even Shark Tank. Hey, or Marcus Lemonis, you guys know that. I love watching The Prophet, but what does he say? He says, hey, you're not going to wake up wondering if you got a job. You're going to wake up wondering how many jobs do I have? Well, that's great. But do you know what it burns on the inside of you, Adam? Hey, I got a job for you, right? Hey, listen, when you hire people, I'm here to give you a job, right? That sounds good. Adam, I'm going to give you a job. Now, who's responsible for you if it's a job?
Your manager? Is that where you're going towards?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if I'm going to give Vanessa a job, or if I'm going to give Sabrina a job, or if I'm going to give Adam a job, I'm now responsible for you. How much weight is that?
Yeah.
How much weight has the small business owner in today's environment with coronavirus felt the weight of, hey, I've got jobs, I've got to provide? Do you know listen, it's the twisted truth that hurts the worst or the worst. That listen this, am I here to provide jobs or am I here to provide an opportunity? And I think that that's the challenge post COVID is so many managers, so many owners. Listen, I'm responsible for my entire market. But what I've come to realize is I'm not responsible for you, I'm responsible to you. And what that means is I will live a clean life that is an accountable life that lives in such a way that I'm going to provide every opportunity, not responsible for you. And man, I tell you that shifts because when I went to Marcus, it was you're not giving me a job, bro. You're giving me an opportunity. And I promise you, I'm going to bet on me. And I think that when we flip the script, like for business owners and release them from the weight of that, you begin to realize, man, it's opportunities. I'm opportunity making. And if you don't want to step in the opportunity, that's okay. But I got other opportunities for other people.
I think it's super good, and we talk a lot about with business owners instilling an ownership mentality with themselves and with others. And so when you talk and make a distinction between an opportunity and a job, you can help people understand that it's they need to own their role and the decision to do this, and it's not 100% up. The business owner takes ownership of the whole thing. It is good to have that ownership mindset, I think, but you also want to propagate that in your people, because if they look at you and they say he's the owner, not me, of my destiny and what I'm doing, then they're not going to contribute in the same type of way either. So yeah, I love that. That's great.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm not doing it. I've provided a lot of jobs in my past. I'm not providing any more jobs because it's freeing to me. And you know what that goes back to is that if I can be accountable for me doing my best, I win. If you want to join me, that's great. And I'm going to provide opportunities, but I'm not carrying dead weight. And I think what we've got to be real careful of is this: is money doesn't come. I was just going to say grow off trees, but when you're spending $1.9 trillion in relief effort and over half of it doesn't even go to the consumer, and everybody chants and cheers and says that's the right thing to do, my concern is we got a lot of jobs and not a lot of opportunities. You're penalizing the people that are providing opportunities, and if that mindset doesn't shift in America, in our jobs, in our industries, we'll go socialistic, which means nobody can win. Here's the problem: if I make $1 million this year, why does it matter to you? You have no idea what I've gone through and the struggles I've had to walk through. And the choice that I chose to take a risk and an opportunity that most failed to take doesn't mean I have to pay for the people who choose not to take opportunities and want jobs. And I think we have to have a voice that says that's okay. In the American dream, become all you can be. Well, the problem is we're saying become all you can be until you hit a certain level, and we're uncomfortable with that because a lot of us like jobs. And I don't know about you, man, but I want to break records. I want to run fast. I want to be the guy, Kevin Banner, or the Bannisters of the world who go in and literally they break the 4-minute mile, and everybody says, "Well, heck, I didn't know it could be broken." Listen, I was with a friend of mine yesterday, 2 days ago. She texted me, and in our world, she hit a number of loans per month that was most people would say, you cannot do that. She texted me. She said, Steve, you'll never believe the number of loans. And I'm like, breaking barriers. That's the Bannisters of the world that say I'm living my potential. I've been given, and she's an immigrant, and she's like, I've been given an opportunity. I'm going to play my best, and I don't want to be penalized from coming from poverty to success because the world's comfortable and they're scared of feeling uncomfortable to be their best and rise to their full potential. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, let's talk about that in a different context. In that when you, so I'm going to keep coming back to this podcast a little bit because I part of my motivation bringing you on was just seeing the success. I mean, I knew it was going to happen when I was on it, and not narcissistically, not because hey, I'm on your podcast, you're going to make it. Not at all. In fact, I was honored to be a part of it. But just seeing the professionalism, the thought that you put into it, taking the time that you do with your podcast and preparation, I was observing all of that, and the community that you formed online for everybody to contribute and learn from. And you had the right mindset of give first. It wasn't about, it's not the Steve Kyle show, right? It's very much about contributing, and I felt that through there, and that's where I knew there was going to be success. But I also, having started this myself, now fully comprehend the amount of work that goes into starting a podcast, and money and time. And so I want to get your take when you got this thing going. You're like, this podcast thing sounds like a cool deal. And so you jump in, and what surprises came to you about was there an effort that you felt like you didn't expect? Was there money that you needed to put into it that you didn't anticipate? Like, what were the surprises and early learning curves for you in getting this thing off the ground, since it was only a few years ago?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's great. I think there's a couple of things. I think, man, when you say the first thing that was a surprise, I didn't realize. Hey, you and I had this. We met at Insanely Tactical. So I did an event called Insanely Tactical in Houston. It was my first event. Again, I wanted to bring an event to Houston that was for loan officers to get better. Adam, I was shocked at how hard it is to build a community and to build it. It's the database, it's the names, it's the community that takes a lot longer than people think. Everybody wants to talk on your platform. Nobody wants to take 2 years to build it. And what everybody thinks, and you see Instagram's overnight success. I love what Tommy Tenney wrote a book called God Chasers. And I remember he was being interviewed on one of the major networks. This was back in the late 80s, I don't know, early 90s. And I'll never forget what Tommy Tenney said. He said that the lady asked him, "Hey, Adam, what's it like being an overnight success?" And he said, "You'll never know how long that night was." And the greatest surprise was that people didn't flock to the great content material we were putting out. And not only did it just takes time to do two things. You have to go through the growing pains. And here's the challenge too, Adam. The fallacy is when I get 10,000 followers, man, I'll have arrived. No, if you're thinking about a podcast, if you're thinking about a YouTube channel, I'd rather 100 activated, committed participants than 10,000 consumers. And it's a mentality shift of more doesn't necessarily mean effective. Let me tell you the funny story with that. And this, you guys will appreciate this. I got a buddy of mine. I don't know if you know Carl White. He's been a great mentor, great friend. He's a coach. He runs marketing. Like he's a coach in the space. He's got mortgage marketing animals. They do some cool stuff. But he did an event, and I text Carl White. He has the #1 podcast in the mortgage space. And I'm like number 2 or 3. So like I'm kind of bouncing in between. I think Phil Treadwell may be number 2. I don't know. There's just, we all bounce, but Carl stays #1, which has been funny. So we did that event, Insanely Tactical, Adam, and I saw Carl was doing another event in Dallas. And so somehow I had Carl's number, and I texted him and I said, "Hey, Carl, first off, I want to congratulate you on the podcast. You're #1. I was number 2 in the rankings on that day." And I said, "Brother, congratulations. I celebrate your success, but I got to win at some point." It was kind of this friendly banter back and forth. And he said, "Haha, hey, there's tons of room at the top. Come on." And so a week later, I said, "Hey, Carl, I just did my event in Houston." And I said, "Hey, I'd love to know more about your event in Dallas." And he said, "Well, how many did you have?" Adam, you were there. I don't know, 150, 200 people. It's not massive, but it's a win. Like to get that many people to pay and come and be a part's a big deal. And the first one. And he said, "Oh, that's great, man. How much did you make?" I said, "Well, I think I lost probably about 20 grand. Lost money. Like, I mean, it was just, we learned. I mean, it was, it was a learning lesson when you're writing a check. And I texted him and I said, "Hey, bro, how many did you have in Dallas?" He said, 40. And I said, "Huh." And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, how much did you make?" He said, "Over 6 figures." Hmm. He said, "Steve, I've learned this. If I want to stroke my ego, I put a lot of people in the room. If I want to have great impact and I want to make more money, I'm going to make it's not about ego. It's either ego or impact, one of the two. And impact will pay you more than ego." And I just thought, Adam, at that point, I realized the podcast cannot be a platform that says, "Wow, 10,000 downloads this month." It has to get granular enough to say, if we become a little famous, I want it to only be because we're being effective. And so my challenge to everyone listening, and whether it's a YouTube or whether it's Instagram or whether it's a podcast, don't let the numbers be a distorted dashboard. It's the effectiveness. I would rather have 100 people in my loan officer leadership group than 10,000. And what I realized was I was trying to just put a bunch of people in because, wow, I got one of the biggest groups. But what I realized, Adam, was when you got 10 people commenting and that's it, and you got 1,500 people in a group, how effective is that? I'm just stroking egos, not being effective. And so I think that was the greatest lesson learned is this: I am content with the audience size. My commitment is to put out great content, and then I'm going to learn to build, because it's the platform, it's the audience is, I mean, you got to build the database. I got to build the platform. I got to build the people. You know, what's so funny about my buddy Carl, and I love Carl, they now power our podcast, powered by the Mortgage Marketing Animals. Carl's followers, and not just followers, but community, is so engaged and active. And I just thought, Adam, I'm learning so many things. It's not the numbers, it's engagement. So whatever it is, just be engaged. The other thing I learned was this: every week comes fast.
Yeah, it does.
So we were doing a weekly podcast, and sometimes now I'll just double them up. Like I'll do 2 on Wednesdays and I get 6 weeks out. But I learned that every week comes fast. We learned that in the church world too, man. Sunday comes fast, you know. And so I would say this: commit to a timeline, because if you don't commit to a 1 year of doing it, you're going to say, this sucks. This is terrible. I'm failing. It's not winning. But your commitment to follow through will help you break through. I love what Maxwell says. John Maxwell says, you know, what you do it, and then the feelings will follow. And so sometimes you get up and it's like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to ask. I don't have the right questions. Some days I'm going through the same crap everybody else is going through, and I don't want to turn on and be a great host. But I found that the commitment over time allows me to push through, which shows me I've got 30% more than what I thought I had.
I think there's a lot packed into what you were just saying, but you know, a lot of little sound bites that I pick up, which I just love hearing people's stories of the failure to have success too, which is, yeah, I'd lost 20K on a seminar that was
that was designed to help people.
You know,
hey, and listen, and
maybe make some, maybe, you know, that would have been
well, and you know, it's, hey, Adam, here's what's crazy too, is the people you thought would support you didn't support you. But you know, and here's the funny thing: everybody wants to stand on stage, but nobody wants to write a check. And here's what I learned is that I'm not building stages for other people. I'm going to get a message out, and I'm going to link arms with guys like you, because there is, I love this. It's something. I'm looking for kangaroos, and I don't want the kangaroos in my life. So my buddy says this all the time. Carl, he's the one who told me this too. He said, Steve, and because here's the deal, you got to find, I was spending several thousand, I had 2 people full-time employed for the podcast. And so literally we're doing episodes, we're working on graphic art, we're trying to grow the content. So, I mean, you're talking thousands of dollars. Now they're college students, so it's a little bit less, but I'm spending $2,000 to $5,000 a month to grow a podcast, which I don't even know is entirely effective. I want to make a difference, but I've made a 1-year commitment to it. And I want to do an event that's going to make an impact in the Houston market, make an impact on loan officers, but I don't know how to monetize it. I'm not monetizing it to get rich. I don't need to get rich on the podcast. I make great money in the mortgages. I just want it to pay for itself. And Carl told me this. He said, bro, you got to stay away from kangaroos. You know what a kangaroo is? They sit there in their mama's pouch and they can't ever reach back and get their wallet. They want to sit in the warmth of your pouch. They want to stand in your Facebook group and advertise their junk. They want to get on your podcast and promote their widget, and they won't contribute, but they'll gladly take your stage. And what I learned, and I've had to learn, is I've got to be a defender of the stage because you've not paid the price. I love what TD Jakes said. Somebody asked TD Jakes one time, they said, how do I come and sit at this table, the head table? He said, you've got to go out and kill something. My question is, what did you kill? Did you write a book? Did you launch a podcast that's touching the world? Did you make an impact that people look back and say, wow, that's the trophy? That brother caught it. He earned his right at the table. And Adam, I think we try to jump rungs and say, you know what? I just want to sit at the table. Why? Because all the popular people are here. I'm not giving any seats at the table, man. I tell you this, the price is too high and the stakes, you would not believe the moral failures of the people I've seen in the last 2 years. You know why you know why they're failing? They didn't pay the price. If they only knew how long that night was, it would have allowed them to forge the character needed to sit at the table and to make a legacy impact, not become a shooting star. And I'm telling you, Adam, I think we do a disservice to people when we allow them to be a shooting star because they're charismatic. They've got a good message. They're articulate, but they've never went out and fought a battle that they won. There's danger in that, man. And I think it's our responsibility in this industry to help others. You know, I'll tell you this, and I've actually got some team members sitting right here, but when Vanessa and Tyler come on now, I want 2 years. You know why I want 2 years? When everybody who joins my market has got to commit to 2 years, because in 2 years you can slay giants with me.
Yeah, love it.
If you're not slaying giants, I'm concerned about your character.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you're talking about some of this stuff too, I think that there's, and I thought about this a lot. I mean, 100% applies to mortgage, but it applies to everything. And I think a lot of times we look at whether it's a podcast or you're a loan officer. There's two things that we always come back to. It's okay. Are you working hard enough, and do you have the right skills, right? Like, are you using the right language with people? Do you understand the system? So we look at skills and we look at work ethic. But there's a third factor that a lot of people skip over, and I think it's one that you've definitely embraced, and that's the risk, right? There's work ethic, there's skill, but there's a risk meter, right? And there's a lot of people that I don't think would take the risk that you took, spending the money that you did and the time in a podcast that you didn't know could be monetized, didn't know if it could pay for itself, didn't know if it was going to impact, right? And there are people that are loan officers that don't take certain risks in how they run their practice. And some of them have gotten to be very successful, but there's still a gap in potential but not because of work ethic or even skill necessarily, but because of the risk of getting outside of a comfort zone and doing something different. Right?
Hey, well, let me ask you this. Why do you think people don't take risk?
Well, I would say fear of what could come out of it, right? Fear of failure. One thing that you said at the very beginning of this podcast, I would answer that. I think you've got your own answer right now, but I think, some of them hearing you got to do it right the first time, right?
Yeah.
Could be one of the reasons they don't take risks. But what do you want to share on that?
I just wanted to hear your opinion on it. You know, that's a great perspective. My question to the audience would be, why not take the risk? What's the risk that you've been sitting on the sidelines on? I don't know. I was just wanting to know your opinion on it. So if it's skills, if it's work ethic. So listen, skills, which we have to get better, work ethic, which means, am I willing to do what it takes? And then number 3 would be risk. Am I willing to take the risk? So, but let's unpack this. I know, hey, and I know we probably have to go in like 7 minutes, but let me just tell you. So I want to unpack this. So risk. Like when I thought about the podcast, Adam, I wasn't thinking about risk. I don't know if we associate it that way, but how I thought part of it was, where do I start? I don't know. Like, man, what do you? That's a risk. How are we taking risk?
But I think the beauty of it is that you had low risk aversion, like because it didn't even register as a risk. You're like, yeah, I'm going to spend money and time on this, and whatever happens.
Well, let me breathe in this, because part of what I did jot down and I was thinking about is, let me tell you how I funded it, because whenever I started it to divert $2,000 to $5,000 of my own money that nobody else was pitching in per month. Which to some may be a lot, to some may not be much, but I'll tell you how I started it then. Was I just started putting 5% away of my net income. So what I would challenge you is this: I think your passion can grow with your income. Now we spend a lot more than that. I mean, we got some great resources, but I'll tell you this. So think about this. Half of it is, what obstacle is in the way to starting what is my passion? And I would challenge you, if you make $1,000 a month, put 5% into a passion. 5% can, but I'll tell you the power of 5%, dude, as your income grows, it turns into a few hundred, a few thousand, to where it ends up being thousands of dollars a month that is going just into passion. And then what happens is you're building a war chest. And now I'm no longer wondering how I'm going to fund the passion. I'm just spending because the money's there. So what I did the first year was just say, okay, my commitment is not only 12 months, but 5% of my net income. I'm going to move into this passion because I can certainly afford 5%. And that's how I began to fund it until we found a way within the last 2 months to fund. Now it's paying for itself, more than paying for itself. And what I'll tell you was, it was interesting because that was a very easy on ramp to fund a passion and not be held back by resource.
Yeah, well said. I think that's a great nugget. Is how you fund the projects that you want to explore. And I think even more, and I know you're good in front of a camera. I know a lot of this comes naturally to you. So in some ways, this wasn't a giant leap or maybe a risk factor for you. But I feel like you have challenged yourself to do things that may not have initially been in your comfort zone here, right? Like, I mean, there's like, well, if you just real quick, if you had to label a couple of things that initially you weren't maybe automatically comfortable with, where you had to stretch yourself a little bit from the beginning of all this stuff, mortgage, podcasting, you can comment on anything. Like, what were the areas that you had to push a little
What
bit?
camera do you need? What mic do you need? How do I set it up? If it has to do with the detail, it's probably something that's difficult for me. So I think that comes into any time you step into something, there will be aspects you don't know. Hey, but Adam, let me tell you this, and I know we'll come to an end on our time, but here's what I was challenged with is this. I have really uncovered, and one of the things we're coaching our guys now is this. Adam, if I were to say, look at your next 12 months and what you're planning to do in 12 months, I wonder if you could do that in 30 days. What would the typical response be to that? So, Adam, I'm looking 12 months ahead and I'm saying at the end of 2021, I believe I can be here having done this. What if you could do that in 30 days? And you know what most people's response would be? And this was my response. How? Wrong question. Who? And that literally transformed my business this year because I'm good at the how. Part of my gifting is strategy. But what I did not recognize was I have been the bottleneck to doubling our business in 30 days. And what I think most people is this: if you're fearful of how to set this camera up, you know who came in yesterday? A buddy of mine. And I had him set up the camera, I had him set up the background, I had him set everything up so that I literally sat down and just had a conversation with you. Because what I've learned is fear is typically overcome by the who. If you're lack on resource, then you have to figure it out. But that's why you got to put 5% of your discretionary funds aside every month, because now I no longer am limited. I hire who's to do what I can't do. So how much fear do I have in my life? If I don't know how to do it, you know what I do? I hire somebody now. I have a CFO of my personal family finances. Deirdre takes care of everything, every bill, every deal. She tells me when I've got accounts coming in, when I've got receivables, I've got automatic payments out of. Why? I hate finances. I just want to report at the end of the month that tells me that I've plugged every hole in my ship and I'm being a good steward. Why? I've hired my who. Who set up this camera? Who set up this mic? Who set up these chairs? It wasn't me. Richie did. He came in yesterday, spent 2 hours. Then when we're done and we do our podcast, Eli comes in, he grabs graphics, he does his stuff. And fear can be overcome with the who, but you got to be committed to setting aside resource.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's, sometimes we think we got to do it all ourselves. Like, you don't move into a house and have to know how the plumbing system works perfectly to enjoy the home, right? You have a plumber for that, right? That's so.
Hey, but listen, but Adam, we've been taught you have to, though. I think society, even as originators, to all of our loan officers are listening. If you could do in 12 months what you dreamed of in 30 days, my question is, who would you need? Because I would bet on you instead of other people. We sit back and say, company, if you'll pay for it, I'll do it. You know what I chose to say? Hey, listen, I'll take the risk for 90 days. And when it's profitable, you're going to meet me halfway. And here's the deal. There's nobody going to bet more on me than me. And so if you'll take the risk, which I don't even consider a risk anymore, because every time I've hired the right who, we've probably doubled our business. This month was one of the best lead months we've ever had. Brought in 2 more people. And I just got to tell you that if there's no risk when I'm betting on me.
Mm.
So we're tripping over literally $100 bills trying to save pennies and saying, well, I don't know. Well, then you need a great coach like Adam, somebody who's going to help you in your leadership skills. I don't need to know how to set up a mic. I need to know how to communicate better. I need to know how to inspire my people. I need to know how to know their disc and know their love language and make sure I'm checking in on them and empowering and equipping them to be more than I could actually be, because half the reason why people in here don't delegate and or you procrastinate is because you don't have the right who. You're procrastinating what you hate. Like my mom this morning is the right who. I called her. She's a great writer. And I just said, Mom, I am stuck. Let me send you my letters. Let me start sending you all my content, edit it, kick it back to me, and let me keep running. And so I think anytime you're stuck, there's a who. You just have to be able to be committed to resource that who and get you unstuck.
Yeah, well said, man. Way to bring it home. I think if redefining risk in a certain way, to finding the people that can be that pillar for you in that area and that you can delegate to is great. So,
Man, I love it. Hey, well, Adam, I got to tell you, brother, you have been a true friend for years. Man, I thank you for being a voice in our industry. Even we were laughing before we hit the record button just about the last event. You're like, hey, I'm speaking. I'm like, okay, I don't know where I'm going to be, but I'll jump on, man. My buddy Adam is speaking at the Mortgage Bankers. And so I just want you to know, man, since the day I met you over, several years ago, you've just been a friend. You look along the industry and you say, you've got brothers and you've got friends. And I count you as one of those, man. You're a voice in this industry. You're doing an amazing thing helping other originators and industry experts get better. And so I thank you for that. Thank you for the voice with the podcast. But man, it is an honor to do life alongside you, brother.
yeah, well, thank you for all those kind words. For a lot more on the forum and the information and education that comes from Steve, if you got as much as I got out of this today, you've got Loan Officer Leadership Podcast, which is a Facebook group you can ask to join, right? And then, and then the podcast itself, which is really filled with a lot of amazing content. So, thanks for taking the time to be here with us, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure, brother. Well, it's an honor, and we'll see you soon.